So primaries are tricky things, and it's a lot of emotion, it's a lot of base politics, and Joe Biden is not campaigning at all. And this kind of ignoring RFK Jr. thing is not working because RFK Jr. is not running a traditional, I'm going to win over the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. RFK Jr. is trying to win over just populists across the board, increase name ID and chatter, and almost create a new coalition. I have no idea if this is going to be successful or not. And, MSNBC had a long segment with Chris Hayes and Brandy Zadrozny, and we've dealt with Brandy Zadrozny before in some stories. She's very smart, a relatively fair person, but she still has that, pepper in her insults. But I think she did a really good job on this interview where she said, look, there's a new coalition being built. It's not right versus left, but it's top versus down, and you're not trusting the institutions. And Chris Hayes says, well, the liberal coalition in America is a high trust society of institutions, and the right wing is a low trust, and that not used to be the case. He's totally right, by the way. It used to be that conservatives were high trust on do you trust the government, high trust on do you trust corporations. Now that's actually changed, where liberals are the ones that are like, yeah, I love Pfizer. And BlackRock is great, and the FBI is like, that's really that's the true political change over the last 20 years. It's amazing. But let's just kind of talk about the calendar. So Iowa is not the first state, from what I understand. It's actually South Carolina, the first state to actually appropriate delegates. So the South Carolina primary is kind of run by the Clyburn and what could be called the Black Mafia in South Carolina. Remember, Pete Buttigieg technically won Iowa in 2020. Joe Biden finished 5th in New Hampshire, and then they just paused and they just did a great reset of the campaign. And then South Carolina primary just totally changed everything when Joe Biden, quote unquote, won that state. COVID happened, shut it down, and they proceeded. So that's a long wind-up. Can RFK Jr. steal one of these you pick off one of these early states?
So you talked about South Carolina. That's the first one the DNC won, and it's the first one under their rules will give those delegates. But New Hampshire and Iowa may still go ahead of them, and under DC rules, the DNC rules, they'll disqualify those delegates from counting. And then all across the nation, this party that says, in the name of democracy, we need to cut dissent, stop people from saying inaccurate or disinformation as we view it. So the party of saving democracy will actually disenfranchise 2 long-term states from their natural role. That's what I mean by the DNC will change the rules at any time to get their preferred candidate. So let's say he wins RFK, Biden's not on the ballot in Iowa and not on the ballot in New Hampshire. Well, let's say RFK wins those. What will the media stir be? I know it will be from your point of view, which is, can you actually believe that they're doing no debates and disenfranchising votes, which is what any rational person will think. But then Biden goes to South Carolina and they whip the vote and RFK finishes, let's say he loses 65 to 33. What happens next? Does he have any money to compete in Super Tuesday? Money is a big deal, as you well know, in politics. And how can he compete all across the country in March? These are the headwinds that he faces, assuming no one else gets in the race, assuming Biden goes forward.